Hey,
Hello, sir.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Great. Let me turn on a light in my room so my kids know I'm doing this.
Okay.
I work from home, so I have this little remote control that lights a LED strip that when I'm on a video, I can turn on a red light and they know not to come in.
Oh, it's actually really smart.
So, a little bit of logistics while people are hopefully starting to show up. Um, you and I doing this together. We each have our own lives going. So if
Yep.
someone comes in under my live, they see my chat. They come in under your live, they see your chat. You and I can't see each other's chats. Um, the person
Okay.
that they'll see, if anyone ever asks, is on their left. So if they come in and just randomly find us, whichever one of us is on their left is the one that they're actually working with. I'll ask that you look at your comments, and if anyone has anything they want to ask or say, just bring it up when you can, and I'll do the
Okay.
same. Um, so other than that, it's kind of open questions. There's one thing I want to talk about tonight that we can get into a little later, but that's
What's that?
about pronunciation of names, and I think that's a topic you
Oh.
might like too. But
Oh
before we
yeah.
go
Yeah.
into that, as soon as we get at least a viewer each, I don't have any. Oh no, I've got a viewer now watching us. So I'll ask. We'll officially start this. I'll have you go through and talk about some work you're working on now and what projects you're doing and anything you want the readers to know about. And then I'll do the same real quick and then we'll go into general conversation.
All right. Well, for right now, you had Andrea on the other about a month ago. Andrea Behringer,
Hmm.
and that has turned into a thing where her husband and I are working together now. We're just working out the contract deal, and I am going to be doing the first of 9 books for him
Hmm.
whenever that gets going. Um, it's a YA young adult. Oh God, what does he call it? Uh, young adult positivity type thing. It's not. It's got some adventure and comedy and all that stuff, but it's just trying to be more upbeat and not just beating you down with the world sucks and so on, and
So something
just
inspirational
up.
for children.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's so far it's pretty fun. It's called Dragons of Introversia,
Hmm.
and it's pretty funny. So far, he's got 2 kingdoms. One is Introversia, and one is Exclamovia. And the introversions are all very quiet, and they like their books, and everybody's very very polite. And meanwhile, over in Exclamovia, everybody's very loud, and you know they interrupt each other all the time, and there's a lot of backslapping and just a lot of funny stuff. So it's I think it's going to be a fun read. And
So just to back that up a little bit, you're getting into narrating books. So is this going to be your first book you're narrating, or is this one of many?
it's my first official book that I'm narrating. Um, I've done some others here and there with I mean not full books, but I've done pieces. I've done auditions. I've read some of my own work. I got it was a lit RPG type of dystopian thing. I found it on Royal Road, I think. It's just a publishing website, and they, didn't have any permission from the author or anything like that. I was just reading it to some of my followers, just for just for the experience. I wasn't. I was recording it, but only so that I could listen back and say, "Hey, I screwed that up," or well, it was for two reasons. One, so that I could listen back and say that, hey, maybe I should have done this one different, or what have you, but also to get used to the mechanics of what they call punch and roll. And with that, you know that you messed up, or there's a weird noise like a chair creak, somebody's driving by on a loud motorcycle, or who knows, any number of things got screwed up for some reason. So then you back up to just before that point, punch in, and then start re-recording. And so for me, it was just getting that mechanic down. I didn't know there was an official name for it at first, because it was just something that I did naturally. And then as I started getting into this, and meeting more and more narrators and finding out the process, it just kind of, I was like, holy cow.
There's a real process.
Yeah, there's a real method to the madness here. And so I've been, it's been a fun learning process. And so, I've done some things here and there, but nothing concrete. And this will be my first official book doing this, and yeah, I think it'll be fun.
Nice. And so last we talked, you were also working on your own book, if I recall correctly. Are you still writing?
Yeah. Yes and no. Since I finished my last book, it seems like the spark has really kind of gone out for writing. I mean, I still do here and there, but I just can't seem to get the excitement that I had for it before. And maybe it's just a slump. Maybe, I don't know. I've been concentrating so hard on the narration game that I really haven't thought too much about writing for quite a while. But yeah, I've got several books in the works. They're kind of a fantasy wrapped in sci-fi deal. It was a bunch of different projects that just kind of spiraled out of control, and I just one day thought, hey, why don't I put them all together?
So I do have a couple comments here, several hellos.
Okay.
Hi. One from TikTok Paints, they ask, is writer's block a real challenge? So I'll say, you've just heard it is. I've not had writer's block myself yet, but I'm still, I've just finished writing my second book that's going to be published soon, or sorry, self-published soon. Yes, I have. I've got it going, and I have someone who's volunteering to do some editing right now. So I'm having someone do editing, and if they do a good job editing, I'll release it right then. If not, I'll have it go through another round of editing. But I also have a couple other books, and I have one that's already released, and then I have a couple other books that I'm in the process of writing. And I'm not really blocked on those, but I would still consider myself within my first year of being a real author. And so writer block might hit me sometime, but I have a lot of stories in my head that are just kind of putting them into book form from where I already have thought of them. So I'm not there yet. And then the next comment we have is, my favorite book is called Boy Under the Water. Do you know that book? It doesn't ring a bell with me. Not to say that I haven't read it, because I've read thousands and thousands of books, but it does not ring a bell. So real quick, I'll go through the book that I have published and show you guys. My book is The After, if we can get it without that glare on it. This is a space opera book that is space opera, space fantasy. Second book gets more into the space fantasy. It's about it's an alternate afterlife in an alternate universe where space travel is normal, high technology is normal, AIs are normal, things like that. The protagonist lands into something that is just an awesome world to him, like what his dreams were made out of type stuff. And things are going great until so there's some hardships with a cultish-like organization that is attacking them and trying to abduct one of the crew members. And the story goes from there. Yes, it's for sale. It's up on Amazon. It's you have a hardback, you have a softback, and you have ebooks. It's also up on my website from my links that you can buy a signed softback if you want. It's also on Kindle Unlimited. So answering a few questions as I'm going here. Yeah, it's totally up for sale. This is the first book of a series. The second book I've already got out. It's coming soon. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were talking about maybe going up to 8 books or so with this?
I have the idea of 8 to 10 books right now. And really where this is going is because it's, I won't go too much in the detail to give out too much of it, but because it's on the concept of an afterlife, and there's the idea in this universe of different realms, and in book 1 and book 2 is dealing with another realm that's kind of connected. There's my storyline as it goes in my head is this big epic story that I've been working on for years in my head. Kind of merges into a lit RPG type universe and has another group of people that deal with things in that universe and then bring them together into a kind of a merging of the two groups and a larger issues. And yes, the first book is on sale on Amazon. And second book will be on sale hopefully within about a month and a half on Amazon as well. But that's what I have now. What I'm working on now. I've also got some stuff I'm doing outside of the fiction world. So I have nonfiction stuff with servant leadership that I've been asked to write. That I'll be putting out a book at some point. Thank you. I'd love for you to buy it, and I hope you enjoy it. So
servant leadership through your church?
No, servant leadership as it aligns to software engineering. By trade, I'm a VP of software engineering.
Okay.
And I lead large groups across the world for doing software engineering. And a leadership style that's very popular nowadays is servant leadership. And how do you apply that in a remote world for software engineering? That's the type of book I'm creating for that. Very specific to the type of work I do and the type of people that do work like I do. And that's actually by request. So I've got a big following on LinkedIn for the business side of things. And I've had a couple viral posts on there that got me a large following that for that side of things. But that's different from this. So TikTok Pants asks, where do you get your inspiration from? I'm not sure which you, so I'll let you answer that first.
Well, if we're talking about writing, it comes from all over the place. You never know what's going to strike a chord or spark a thought. One of my series is a isekai thing where whole bunch of people from Earth are kidnapped by aliens and put into basically a real life MMO. And so it's kind of lit RPG and whatever, but that just kind of comes from, one, I'm an anime fan, but two, I've always loved D&D, and just kind of gotten my own thing. And part of it is I stole the idea from a pair of game designers. I tried for years to get a hold of them, but I think both of them are passed on now. And just kind of took one of their game mechanics and stuck it in there. And so it's kind of a hodgepodge of things. I'm a big sci-fi nerd, fantasy nerd, so for me, at least as an author, I'm constantly pilfering stuff from other sources. So I borrow from this, I steal from that, pretty shamelessly at times, and just turns into weird stories or ideas, and then I don't know. I just kind of let it. Some people that I've talked to, they say that they get the whole story in their head. It might come all at once, or they might just have an idea, and then it just kind of balloons out into a big thing. And so they've got everything already worked out. For me, I get a story, I think about it a little bit, I kind of have an endpoint in my head, and then maybe a few checkpoints along the way. But for the rest of it, it just kind of, I like to say that I like to be as surprised as everybody else about what I write. Because you just never know what's going to happen when I sit down. My favorite example is in that isekai, I had a bunch of friends sit down for a small meal, just average dinner after a day in the dungeon, and it's just a nice quiet evening, and then all of a sudden, bar fight. Had no idea it was coming. Just all of a sudden, there was a bar fight right in the middle of it, and I was just like, what in the hell just happened?
Cool. I think I do kind of a mix. I'm going to answer two quick questions here. So someone asked to say if we think it's okay for a child to make a book, and I'm going to resoundingly say absolutely. I've supported some really close friends of mine. One of them has a daughter that she's 13 now, and she's written a book. And I've supported her getting that book out there, and it's actually probably sold more than mine did initially. Kind of stalled after that, but when she released it, she had a lot more friends and family buy than I did. So that was her big sale, and I think it's great. Even if she doesn't get it out further than that, it gave her the experience, and that's absolutely great. And with the self-publishing, the capability of doing that, it is so easy once you're old enough to have an account with Amazon to do it. If not, you can work with your parent, and then they could actually help you publish it. Writing books from a kid's perspective to another kid's perspective is great. You might need an editor more than others, but that's fine too. Every author needs an editor. As far as being artistic and your mind is kind of weird, I think some of the best authors have neurodivergent. So go for it. Take it on. It's I'm sure even on TikTok you could find other people to help support you depending on what genre you're writing on.
Oh yeah, Book Talk is huge. There's people with all kinds of interests, whether it be romance, fantasy, sci-fi. It's all out there, and all you have to do is find your people, as it were, and you'll be able to find support pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And even if you don't have a chance finding support, reach out to someone like me or even Chris, and we'll help you find support. The author community is really helpful like that.
Absolutely.
I do want to go back to the other question to answer that from my perspective for the influence. Much like Chris, I've loved sci-fi and fantasy my whole life. I'll take that back. My schools growing up through, primary school, I didn't have a library that actually had good sci-fi and fantasy. I also didn't have parents that would take me to the library. It was probably about 18 that I discovered sci-fi and fantasy on my own for books, and then I just got a voracious appetite for it. Used to do a lot of the smaller books, a lot of the novellas or the short stories, and I'd go to a book exchange, and where I'd get 20, 30, 40 books a week, they'd let me do 2 for 1. So if I turned in 2 books in that genre, I can get 1 in exchange for free. And so I'd buy some, then I'd read them, then I'd go back and get half as many and not have to buy as many as I kept going. Loved that book exchange. Went through everything they had in sci-fi and fantasy over about a year. And then I started buying books and going it even fuller. So that was where a lot of my baseline came in. I really took to one of my favorite authors, and I totally lost his name out of my head. It dropped right out. iRobot, Foundation,
Asimov.
So I really love his work, and I've been able over time to come up with a lot of his harder to get work. So it's not just Foundation, it's Foundation Earth, Foundation Universe, it's the iRobot books, it's his short stories, it's Rising Sun, things like that.
Didn't he write the Rama books too? Garden of Rama, and or is that?
Yes, he did. And he's also done nonfiction. He used to write textbooks, which I found
Did he really?
amazing. I never bought any though. But I really fell in love with his writing style. So his writing style was kind of revolutionary when he did it. Before him in sci-fi, everyone was about really complicated writing, really writing to challenge the reader for the high intellect. And he came in, he was one of the first to actually come and say, I'm writing for the common Joe. I could still take this high technology, this high, science ideas, but write them in a way that are available to anyone to read. And that's really how people learned of iRobot and how it became popular, one of the most popular sci-fi books of all times. And it started a whole change in the genre and how it's written. And nowadays you'll find a lot more books written for everyone than you will the books that are just not even just high fantasy. High fantasy is still written for everyone, but high fantasy that really, not fantasy technology, but high technology that challenges people, that uses only big words, fancy writing, using things you'd have to look up a thesaurus or a dictionary on for most of them. So that influenced me on the style. As far as the story, for most of my life, I had chronic acute insomnia. And I was laying up at nights, and I read a lot of books doing that. But also I thought of a lot of ideas.
Same here.
And over the years, I thought about writing them, and I was just told, don't do it. Dumb idea. Writers don't make money. Sci-fi won't make money, all those things. And I have this other career I'm doing. I'm making a lot of money. Wasn't until I got to reading the Jane Chaney, who's a space opera author who releases like crazy, a couple books a month. But he's very popular, and yeah,
wow,
yeah, he has a whole team behind him now. Very successful, but he's writing books like what I want to read and like the storylines I want to do. And he's writing them fairly quickly. It's not the processes like what you're looking at for traditional publishing. And I started talking to him. He has his own Facebook group. He's one of the few sci-fi authors that are successful with Facebook group. And
so he's writing it serially?
He's writing a whole bunch of different series, like 20, issuing each one in a series. And some mergers and it's a variety of stuff. But he has, last I counted, he had like 85 books. But I got to talk to him about writing and my ideas, and asked him, like, how do you even get into it? What was it about? Is it worth it? And he just looked at me and said, you had a good idea. I like your idea. But your fear is your problem. If you can't sit down and write and release book one,
the mind killer.
You will never do anything. Your life changes the day you release book one. And it might not be, you might not be successful after book one. He wasn't. It took like 10 books before he started making money. But if you can't get past book one, you can't do anything. So don't get caught up in doing too much. Don't over edit. The first book, don't pay for the $1,500 editor. Get the $500 editor. Get your art cheap for your first book. All these things, and he really got me to think about that.
Beta readers.
And he said, if you can't write 1,500 words a day when you sit down and do it, you probably aren't going to be successful at it. And, well, I could do 1,500 words easy. I could do 10,000 words on a weekend. One day in a weekend. And so I thought, wow, I could do that work. I could get it out there. I have the story. I like the idea. I'm going to try it. A month later, I had it first draft. And a month after that, I had it edited and hit publish. And now I'm here. I have another book on the roll, and I have another one I'm writing. That actually worked out well. I have a couple of comments here. Have you gotten anyone commenting yet?
Nope.
All right.
I've got a couple people watching, and I really appreciate them sticking around and watching. But so far, nobody has said anything that I'm aware of.
So TikTok
and that's okay.
is actually named Ethan, and Ethan's been commenting some. Ethan said, do find as author, it's hard now these days without the outside influence of movie and games. That's kind of hard to do, and I guess with inspiration and ideas that was related to. Movie and games really does influence a lot of writers, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're always influenced by things you consume.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I love time travel as well from Frederick and black holes. I don't know if I'm ever going to get into black holes in this series, but I love black holes too. And I'd love to make.
Are you going to make them? Are you going to make them just a destructive force in the universe, or are you going to make them a wormhole?
I've already got ideas for portals, and I've already got faster than light travel, which is kind of like wormholes, but because it's space fantasy, I'm not going into the technology. Yeah, that's the death knell.
If
you, I don't know with black hole what I'd make it. There's so many possibilities. I'd even think if I did a black hole, I might even make it a good force in the universe just to change what everybody's already written about it, just for fun. And then Frederick says he'd love to make a fantasy book about space, including Earth. Go for it. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, do it. do it. I mean, that's what I'm doing. Part of my whole shtick is um, I started thinking about just one day I started thinking about the Library of Alexandria. Um, and I've often wondered how far back that set us as far as knowledge and technology when that was burned. Some people theorize that there were early uh, concepts of steam engines and things like that from 2,000 years ago. That got me thinking, what if that wasn't the first time that that's happened? What if you go back even further? Maybe Atlantis is involved. And then I thought, what if we as Earthlings went to space back with Atlantis? And then something happened and it wiped out everything on Earth. We're still out in space, but something happened and it wiped out everything on Earth, and it reset the clock, and here we are in modern day. So it's almost a time paradox, because I've got modern day Earthlings and then space Terrans at the same time.
Sorry about
Absolutely
that.
nothing saying you can't do it. Oh, it happens.
There's a couple more comments they have about it. I'll go through them real quick. They were so a side chat in my thing about do people think that a post-apocalyptic Earth is better, or pure space or other planets for storytelling? They went back and forth on what they thought. They thought it's more cool if it's just space. I'm going to say it's cool either way, but there's a trick to both of them. If you're writing about Earth, you've got to bring some fact of Earth in it. So it's a well-known story about the Library of Alexandria. Atlantis is a well-known story. So you can get away with talking about that because it's a well-known thing about Earth. If you're going to talk about a city, you're going to have to really talk about a city that people know. So let's say you based your city, it starts out of Seattle. You're going to have to know what Seattle's like. And that's a trick.
Yeah,
if you're going to do it in Iowa, you're going to have to know what Iowa's like. And you're going to have to include that in your book just enough to get people to feel like that who live there are really in Iowa or Seattle. Now, the same is true about the space civilization to an extent, but you get to invent it all. So you can invent a planet or a space station, but you've got to stay true to what you invented. So if you invent a space station that only can hold 10 people, you can't say in the next book it had 20 people without saying something about how it changed. You can't have a planet that is 90% water and all blue oceans and then say something about how you're in the largest desert that takes up half the world. You've got to stay consistent.
Consistency.
And the consistency is trickier when you're dealing with things people know. And so when you're talking about deserts or oceans, people know them. Now, you can put alien stuff in them easy, but people know generally how they work. When you're talking about Earth and a city, people know the city. They know how it works. And if you totally invent things, you got to be careful to stay within the context of what would be real within their perspective of that place. I hope that
be convincing in how it would be an alternate society. Like I think of Jim Butcher with his wizarding books. He operates out of modern day Chicago, but the way he weaves it around is, it's still modern day Chicago, but there's this whole subset that most people wouldn't know about unless they're part of it, where it's it's like Fight Club. First rule of Fight Club: you don't talk about Fight Club.
But you still have to work within the context of the larger thing. It's even like Harry Potter, right? They have the hidden streets.
Yeah, Exactly.
or the hidden train loading area, what do they
Platform.
call it? Platform, thank you. The hidden
Yep.
platform, it still works in the context of what everybody knows is the platform within London or wherever they were. I think it was London. Um, that place,
Well, England. Yeah.
England, so that place knows. People know what that would look like, or places like that would look like. So they're working within the context of reality, but only part of it's available to them. And that's where that was done well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an excellent example. That Jim Butcher, a whole bunch of other people have done similar things with their supernatural, whatever, vampires and werewolves, and having their wars in secret, and they're shrouded by magic, so people don't see the absolute carnage that's happening, or they take the fight out of outside of Gotham, or whatever it is, and then that way they can have their punch up and whatever without drawing too much attention to it. And if you can do that, where you weave it around, in and through, like Mike's saying, you really need to know the area, at least to a certain extent, um, so that you can make it realistic for somebody who does live there. Um, so that they can say, "Oh, hey, I know where Hyde Park is," or whatever it is, and they can, "Hey, Megan," um, and they can say, "Oh yeah, I know where that is. I know where that cross street is. That landmark is very well known." You don't necessarily have to know everything that, there's a guy named Lou that works in the bread shop there. I mean, you know, nobody's going to know that, but
Unless Lou is horribly famous for working there. But
well, yes,
I absolutely agree. And not naming a name, not naming the author of the book, I wouldn't do that. I have read a book, and it's a series of books, but I kind of started midway. That was urban fantasy, and it kind of bothered me because it felt so unnatural. They talked about where magic exists, and people got used to magic, and they started incorporating it in military and paramilitary groups, and some people just have it, and there's independent groups of people working with magic, but it's well known. There's government agencies, there's police that have magic, all these things, and that's all fine and cool, and it's based on Earth. That's all fine, but what they then did was leaned on every movie we've ever had. Every sports team with all the current players and all the current coaches and all the current presidents. And if Magic's been around for 50 years in Earth, it wouldn't be the exact same as it is. So you can't just say we're going to stream Magic, say it was here for 50 years, and then every actor won the same award in the same year for the same movie with the same actors from the same movie studio. No. All your movies would be changed because magic would have an influence on them. Heck, how you made them would be influenced. Special effects would be influenced. All these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Special effects would be completely different because you wouldn't have to work so hard on many of them because, you want to give the illusion that something's floating.
And you can actually make it float.
If you can actually... Right. If you can actually do that, I mean, it kind of takes some mystery out of it. So
if you're going to bring an element in, the lesson from that, and a lesson I've taken as an author, and I think every author should take is if you're going to bring an element into real life, you've got to understand or at least get an idea of how that affected real life. That's just something. Yeah. So if you're going to bring it in 10 years ago, what would 10 years of effect be?
Yeah, that's what I really admire with some of these authors who can do alternate history, because then they really just kind of run with it, and some of them have really put a tremendous amount of thought into it. And sometimes it's just okay. So they didn't actually assassinate Lincoln. So what happens then? Oh well, he turns into a vampire hunter. And what? uh,
Although
but
some are
there
so
was
absurd they're worth watching.
well, yes, absolutely. But I used to have I don't know if I still have it because I've lost a lot of things in moving throughout the years. But I used to have a book. It was called. It was an anthology, just alternate histories, volume 1 or something like that, and it just kind of jumped all over the place. It was one of the things was Civil War. What if the South won, or what if Lincoln hadn't been assassinated, or what if General Lee had been assassinated? How would that change it? How would it change it if Grant was? Uh, Going back to Thermopylae, what happens there if they everybody makes a big deal about the Spartans, but what happens if the other 7,000 people don't just randomly show up?
Yeah,
I mean, it's not just them.
a good show, which I think was based off some books, was The Man in the High Castle, who did actually that with World War II. What if the Germans had won? And what if Germans took over the U.S. or parts of the U.S.? And those are great examples of going back and saying what if and playing it
Yeah.
forward. I love those things when you can do it. We have a couple more questions here. So, do you guys study a lot about space or equations for your books? I'll start. I've done lots of equations and stuff because I have a software engineering background, and that's been part of my life. Do I study a lot about space? Only if I need to. So I mean that by depends on what you're writing.
Yeah.
If you're writing about a pulsar, you better read about a pulsar. If you
Yeah.
read about if you're writing about a black hole, you better find out what current thinking is on black holes. But
Right.
otherwise, I'm not gonna. I follow a lot of people that do like NASA talks, and I know what the new telescope's getting, the images that are coming down, and seeing a lot of people talking about that. But I don't study it, and I think most authors are like that.
Yeah. From my experience, what I've done is I learn about a bunch of different things. Like one of my ideas is that somebody is a skill they pick up is blacksmithing, and part of that is because I love the show Forged in Fire. So I've watched that a lot. I've picked up a bunch of stuff from it. I've done just enough studying of it that if I were to write about some of the process, I could probably sound knowledgeable enough that it would be convincing if you don't know a lot about it. An actual smith would probably look at that and say, what in the world are you talking about? That's not at all how that works. And other things like that, like woodworking or baking, mechanics,
Wormholes.
wormholes.
And if
Yeah,
you're
I
going to
mean,
write in any detail about any of those, you would have to have the knowledge to do that to sound exactly like you said, convincing.
Yeah.
But that also depends on the genre you're writing in. So while I'm doing sci-fi, I'm currently writing in space opera. Space opera is specifically not as technical as hard sci-fi. Hard sci-fi, you're going to be studying about the subjects you're writing. So if you're going to be writing, so a scientist finds a new way to build a wormhole to another universe that has a black hole on the other side of it, you better know some current thinking about that and what physics has to say about the subject matter. Otherwise, you're going to get
Or,
bashed by all the physics guys.
oh, well, yes. Yeah. Or, and this is kind of what I do. again, going back to my isekai, it's technically under lit RPG, but so far in about 40,000 words, I have yet to say one word about stats.
Depends on the approach you take, yeah. If you're living, and I've seen both ways, and both are successful. Some people will do it where you live for the level up and see all the numbers. Some people will do it as you're just naturally living. So the approach is important.
Yeah, and that's the way that I've done it. Does it always work? No. I was listening to a book that a buddy of mine did, Heroes of Last Resort. Fantastic book. I listened and answered a couple questions for him while he was recording it. I don't want to elevate myself and say, yeah, I worked with him on it because, I didn't really. He said, well, does that sound right? Or I helped him with the pronunciation of a couple words. Yep, no big deal. But there were parts of it. I've now got the book on Audible. And there are sections where it's literally 3 to 5 minutes of nothing but stats. Oh my God. It's interesting, but it's not that interesting. For some people, I'm sure it's just like, oh, cool, he got 2 points in that. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, shut up. Get on with it. I did actually fast forward through that and found out that this last one was 4.5 minutes of stats. And
I read
that's just not my bag.
A famous lit RPG, Ken Lozito or something like that. I read one of his books. I read many of his books, but I read one of his books where it was every couple of events levels up in the stats, and he did like a full stat page, and then considers all the stats. I would skip the stats page, skim the covers the stats, and then just move on. Because otherwise I would have to like print out the stat pages, right? And compare the stat pages or something like that. And that's, if it's my character, sure, I'll do that. If it's someone else's character I'm reading about, not so much. So, but it was,
everybody likes different things. Yeah, for me and my wife, we were listening to it, and we were both just sitting there going, okay, cool. Yeah, great. Keep going. Yep.
Strength 5, wisdom 4, intelligence 10.
You've gained 5 points of fame because I was like, I don't care.
Yeah, that gets annoying. We have a couple more questions. The younger gentleman who was asking about stuff said bye. Had to go. Ethan, I've missed some of your questions above, so repeat them if there's something good you want. But he asked, as an author, at what point do you think this is a story that makes it? If you feel like you like your story, I think what you're getting at is like when you're thinking of a story, at what point do you think that story is going to be good? Worth writing. That's hard, but it's like when I think of the story that was in my head, I was always worried other people wouldn't like it. Everyone always told me people wouldn't like it. When I told people what the idea was, when I was able to articulate the idea to someone else, they actually said, ooh, that sounds good. I want to read that.
Yeah.
That gave me confidence, but it wasn't until I got a lot of that I actually thought, okay, I'll do the first one. So it's the first book that's going to be the hardest one to get that confidence to do it. That's the way it was for me. I was 49 before I wrote my first novel and published it. But some people come naturally at it, I guess.
Yeah, some people do. Like I know a guy. I'm in several writing groups. Again, for that Royal Road, Scribble Hub. Oh, there's so many, but there's one guy. He writes kind of like the guy that you were talking about with where he's doing 2 books a month. He regularly posts charts in the groups that I interact with him in. He will do, on a slow week, 50,000 words a week. That's an entire book a week. And he's writing in 4 different ongoing serialized stories. And he's doing 50 to 70,000 words a week, and that's pretty much what he does full time. And he just runs off at the fingers. He makes it. It varies, but I go to his Patreon and subscribe star pages every now and again just to go get jealous. And he's making. It varies, but he makes anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a week, or a month, because of everybody who likes to follow his serials.
Yeah. He doesn't now don't take that as saying everyone's going to do that. So I want to give
absolutely not.
That's not. We know some people that have done it. There's some obvious famous ones, but not every author is going to get there.
Oh God, no. No, I've got one of my books posted on Scribble Hub and Royal Road, and I've gotten a total of 10,000 views between them. About 5,000, 5,100 each last time I checked. And it's taken me over a year to get that. So, some people just get it. Some people don't. Granted, I was publishing basically against the grain in there because they're more anime type focus, where I was putting out sci-fi. But still, I mean, I did decent at it. I got a few fans, if you will. If I may be so grandiose as to say I have a couple of fans. And, it's just a very interesting process. But that's a stark example. I wrote 50-some thousand page word book, published it, did everything I could to promote it. I got 10,000 views between 2 different websites. This guy is pumping out 50,000 words a week, and he's got his finger on the pulse of what people want. So he's able to run with it. He has that talent. I'm full of crap, but I'm not full of that much crap. I can't write that much.
You've got to have the ideas, and sometimes that takes a team, takes groups, people, but it takes talking to your fans. A lot of times when you get more fans, you get more input, which could use more ideas. And that's where a lot of these very prolific authors will get some of it. But not everyone's going to get there, as we said. And you should write if you have a passion to write and you have a passion to tell a story. Don't expect to make money. If you want to try to make money, plan to write a lot. Because even the famous guys that we're talking about still took 10 books or more before they really started catching on. Do you want to go to...
You look at... Oh, I'm sorry.
I do want to go to a couple questions here because they're backing up.
Sure.
Ethan asked, is it easier to write a script for a movie or a book? I've had that conversation with a former employee of mine who would write scripts. He wouldn't write any books. He would only write scripts. And he did sci-fi fantasy scripts. And I'm writing books. I sat and talked to him for hours about this. And I really come down to it depends on who you are. He thought it was easier to write scripts because he controls everything. When you're writing a script, you're saying the door closes, pick up the cup, the blue cup. To him, that gave him control of the universe. To me, that leaves a lot of things you didn't say. I can't do a script. If anyone ever approaches me to write for a movie or to take my book and adapt it to a movie or a series, I won't do it. I will say, yes, let's get a professional scriptwriter to convert it, because they're going to do a better job than I would, because I would suck at it. That's just a mindset.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with the scriptwriter, it's a, like you said, it's a different mindset, because I don't know. To me, it's kind of the same ish. In concept, at any rate. Because either way, you're controlling the scene, whether you're writing a book or a script, because you're still trying to, when you're doing it with the book, you're using the theater of the mind.
Yep.
And so you're still painting that picture. With a script,
it's less first person. It's more, you're more third person all the time with a script.
Yeah, because you're going to be relying on somebody else to come up with the visuals for you. Whereas an author, you have to come up with them and you have to describe them to somebody in a thorough enough, without being boring, a thorough enough fashion, so that they can get a fairly accurate picture in their head. And everybody's going to have their own headcanon for it. And so it's going to be different unless you have somebody who will do concept art for you. And I'm kind of squirreling here, but yeah, to me, they're kind of the same, but obviously different. I see that you can have the control either way. It's just a matter of how you block it in your head. If you're good at, you think that you want to have the camera this way, okay, maybe that'll work better for scripting. But as an author, you kind of set the scene, so the reader, they can maybe, instead of just having this thing, they kind of pan around and they can see it from all different sides. So
well, Ethan,
they are different skill sets, but they're to me they're similar enough that I could potentially go either way. Maybe.
Ethan adds to this. He thinks it's hard if you create something, this world, and then a scriptwriter takes it over. Yeah, but I think that's where you have people become the technical references. Like the J.R.R. Martin didn't do the scripts for Game of Thrones. He reviewed the scripts to see that it kind of aligned with his vision. And that's because he wouldn't be the type. I wouldn't want to read a script that J.R.R. Martin would read. It would be way too detailed and way too. I don't think he would write a good script because of his style of writing. I think his style of writing is great for reading, but not for a script.
Yeah, so I don't know. I have problems with his style of writing, but anyway.
I think that's where you've got to split the effort to the people that could do it best. You would still get the most creative control over it, and I would, if I ever did a deal with my book, I'd want that creative control over. I want to be able to say yes or no, but I don't want to write the words to get the scenes, because there's going to be a lot of work to do. Now, I would want to sit with like artists, because some of the things I don't have art of like the ship that my crew's in, but I have very strong idea of what it should look like. And even some of my
Yeah.
writing talks about what it should look like. So I would still want to sit with the creative types to create some of the fundamentals of what the series would be based on. But still, the script writing would to me would have to go to someone who does that for a living and can spit it out quickly from some work that's creatively from someone else.
Yeah. Well, it also seems to me, because I've never actually written a script, so I'm just surmising. But I mean, not a full script. I've done a little bit of scripting for a commercial, but a 20-second commercial does not compare in any way to
Movie, yeah.
to a movie or a TV show. So, given that, I've done I've done lost the thread of my thought. Is what I've done lost.
Well, a thought that would be good for you, though, is you're kind of in this situation where you're taking someone's creative work and putting it into voice. And while it's not as much as doing like a script, but there's still differences. And there might even be word changes, because how you say something's a little different than how you write something sometimes. And so I think yours is, I wouldn't want to do a narration of my own book. Would I hire a narrator or do a deal to split the profits with one? Yes, because someone else who knows how to do it can do it well, has the patience to do it, as long as they stayed true to my story. And I think that's
Right.
where, it's that kind of cooperation is where I think you have to find that balance.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me partially what I was going to say, and brings up another point that I wanted to bring up. With the scripting process, because I thought about this a lot after seeing the Lord of the Rings movies. I love those books. I read them a lot. They were a big part of my childhood. My dad read The Hobbit to me when I was 6. I read The Lord of the Rings in 5th or 6th grade. And then reread them. And then I see the movies come out, and there's things where, not constantly, but there was enough things where it would just pull me right out, and I'd say, wait, that didn't happen, or that wasn't in the book, or that's not how they said that, or just different little things. And I've been thinking about it a lot for the last 20 years, and just thinking about how you have to compromise with that. Is it going to be as good as the book? Probably not. Just because there's so much more stuff that's going on that happens, but you have to know what to put in, what to cut out, and that's where that's probably where I would struggle, because I'm like, oh well, I mean, why don't we make a 14-hour movie? I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah, and you think about it, I don't think Tolkien could have done that. Really,
probably not.
He made a lovely stories, but could he have actually made those movies? No, I don't. Well, his time either wouldn't have helped for that. But
well, he wouldn't have allowed it in his lifetime, actually, because he wouldn't let anybody do anything with his work other than publish it. And then after he passed in 1973, his son, Christopher Tolkien, eventually loosened up enough where in the early 80s, that's where we got the cartoons from.
Which were horrible.
And they were horrid. Just absolutely horrid. But I grew up with them, so I love them to pieces. Still terrible, but just I love them. And he probably, just based on those alone, would have been spinning in his grave. Now with the movies, he would have been like, oh, well, that's yes, that is very pretty, but that is not how it happened in my book, and that is not how it would happen at all. I do not know where you're getting this information from, but in my book, they did not do that. Treants, they didn't look like that. They were much more robust. Whatever. It just, I don't think he'd probably have an aneurysm. I just.
So
so you just have to. I think you have to learn compromise, because it's not going to be exactly what you want. It's not going to be what you have in your head. It's never going to be the same thing for everybody.
Yeah, and you got to realize that as a author, and you have to. But that's also where, if you can, have some creative, it'll get closer. Not the cartoon version. But I did want to get to one of Ethan's questions here. Ethan, you asked if we could both go over where we draw inspiration from and what got us into writing. We actually talked about that at the very beginning before you dropped in. So I will pitch something now. I actually take the recordings from these videos I do with other authors and talk about sci-fi, and I put them up on YouTube. So I'll once I put this up on YouTube, if you follow me, you'll see that I'll put a video out saying that the video is up on YouTube and available. And you can follow that channel, and anytime you miss one of these, I'll be posting them up. There's 4 videos from 4 previous ones I've done, and every time I do one of these, I'll post it up there. So I'll ask that once I post it, it will take me probably all of tonight to get YouTube to do the thing, because it takes forever for it to scan it to make sure I'm not doing anything illegal here. But should be available sometime tomorrow before I get there. But that's the thing I do for always. I do want to bring up something. We're actually over the time we said we scheduled. So if you still have some time, I'd like to talk to you about one topic.
Oh, I've got plenty of time.
Okay. I do have to do a late dinner for my kids soon, so it can't be too long for me. But this is something that's been coming up from several different venues: TikTok, Facebook, comments I've had on my book, or questions I had on my book, my website, and then just some general authors talking. I want to bring it up with a narrator and have the conversation. It's pronunciation in books. A lot of readers find it really hard, and I'm included, to figure out what the correct pronunciation would be within sci-fi and fantasy books especially. I know that for a fact, that every sci-fi book and fantasy book I've read probably had one name that I mispronounced wrong in my head. Some books are worse than others. My book isn't that bad, but I even find something as one of the primary characters I have is spelled Z-O-E. In my head, that's Zoe. We have a lot of people in the United States that are Z-O-E called Zoe. So what did I mean?
Yeah.
Now, that's a very minor thing, right? Both are technically correct, but readers say they want to know what the writer intended. And so the question is, how could that be done? And a couple of the ideas I've heard put out there are, one, a glossary that includes, phonetical spelling. And another is doing parentheses behind the names the first couple of times they're introduced in a book, which sounds great for a reader. I think that sounds amazing. To an author, that scares the shit out of me. We can talk more about that in a minute. The other idea is to do it at the beginning of a chapter, have like an insert page or just like under the chapter heading that says names introduced and do them there. But only do that for the first time in the book. And that scares me a little less, but still scares me. So both of those scare me. The reason why is the way you write a book. A lot of people will start, beginning to end. But a lot of authors will also do it by scenes. And those scenes could get rearranged.
Yeah.
So as you're editing, you can massively rearrange the order of things. You might have a timeline issue and you take this chapter or this scene and move it to this chapter or before this chapter, this part of the book. And doing something with the names at the beginning of that would mean I would have to do it after I've totally solidified everything in my book, had editing done, proofreading done, ready to release, and then I go back in and put the new names the first few times they come in the book. Now introducing more places for me to do errors. Now introducing more formatting problems. Now introducing.
Right.
So it gets to be really difficult. The idea of doing a glossary is a little less difficult because you could put that at the end of the book, but still you could have, easier because you could do it before you finish. Or you could do an online glossary and put a link in the book. But then how many people are actually going to go to either one of those glossaries? So the best for the reader sounds like in line. The best for the author sounds like not in line. What do you think? Because you've got to deal with this. And I'm sure you have to interview authors to even get the right pronunciations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Whenever I'm doing any kind of audition, if it's anything that I'm a little bit sketchy on, I'll send a message to them and say, hey, how, did you have a specific voice in mind for said person? Were you thinking that they sounded this way or that? Accent, whatever, but also how in the hell do you pronounce their name? I don't put it that way, but it's like, when they've got to steal a Monty Python line, when they've got 4 M's and a silent Q in there, how the hell do you pronounce that? So I just ask straight up and say, hey, what, how do you pronounce that? With the author that I'm working with now, Andrea's husband, James, he is going through and he's going to be doing a pronunciation guide for me, because when I started reading his book, the first 3 chapters, I was pronouncing the main character as Ezelin Sky something or other. And turns out he always had it Ezelin. Mm-hmm. And then Kamina is Kamina, or Cami. You just have to, for me, I have to ask. But my favorite way that I've seen this done, all the main there's a series called The Guardians of the Flame by Joel Rosenberg. It's a kind of a prototype of the isekai thing. He wrote them in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe. Or no, mid to late 80s. I started reading them in the late 80s. It's about a group of college kids. They've got a D&D group going, and they have one new guy join. He just happens to start playing the one class that they need. All right, cool. They go in, something mysterious happens. Next thing you know, they all wake up in their characters in that world. And so it just kind of maybe is something of a progenitor of that genre. But what he did is he knew that some of his names were a little bizarre. So at the beginning of each book, he had a listing on there, the dramatis personae. I'm probably butchering how that's said.
You need phonetics for that, yeah.
Probably. Yeah, but it was the dramatis personae, and it just went through all the big characters, not all the side characters. You know, you've got a random tech or a healer or you know, an engineer or something that you talk to once, and maybe they've got a name. You go, why? And you're just like, hey, Hal, how's it going? You know, something like that. You don't necessarily need to go into, but all the big ones, he had their name, the phonetic pronunciation of it, and then just a brief description of them. You know, it wasn't anything that gave anything away. It was this guy, he is a barbarian who likes a longsword.
I should have you look
Doesn't
at
tell you
my
anything about
online
it?
glossary. See what you think of my online glossary. I had a bunch of conversations with, not even about pronunciation, but I put it in there. But I had a bunch of conversations with some readers about, would they prefer a glossary in the back or the front, or would they prefer it online, especially with Kindle readers that always skips them. So if I put the consensus was from my readers, put a link in there, and so that you can go to your website, and then from your website you can see the character details or the rest of the glossary, whatever you put in there. So I put a glossary up on my website, and then I went back and put pronunciations on just the main team characters. I should shoot you the link and let you see it. But I'm struggling with that myself, and other authors are struggling with it, because how often are people going to go out to that? And
well, in a physical book, it was fine, because you're trying to find where the start is, and you come across, oh, hey, here's a list of characters. This is probably important.
And that absolutely. Or if you're curious, you look, right? Because I always look to see if a book had a glossary, because, you know, I want to know the name of a town. What about it? They just mentioned it. Is there more detail? But that's a physical book. I almost never, even with the same book, if I read it in a Kindle, I just don't even think of doing it. Because while you can go up there and do your, you know, the navigation and go to whatever the glossary would be, it feels so abrupt and breaking your rhythm on the device that most people don't ever do that. And that's been discussed over and over and over again. I won't even question it anymore. But it's one of those things that if someone's never going to see it electronically, at least if I put the link in there, maybe they'd go. But that's where they're saying it would work more electronically if you did it in line. And I absolutely agree. Yeah, line would be great for the reader. It's just hard.
Yeah, it'd be kind of a nightmare. Or if you do like Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman did in many of their books with like the Dragon Gate, Death Gate cycle. Those books are just chock full of footnotes. So you'll get to something and there's a star there, and then you go down to the bottom of the page and it may be half the page is dedicated to describing what that reference is to. And it's just, it's a little off-putting nowadays, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Especially when you get in the smaller formats we have now. So 5x8. Yeah. When you do a 5x8 with double spaced, you know, that's going to be a lot of your page, if not a whole page, for a footnote.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an idea. I'm going to bring this up for more and more people to get ideas. I want more readers to give answers. I want more authors to give answers because it's both sides, right? And narrators because you're going to have to consume them. But it's just I think this is something we need to resolve more because so many people are complaining about this that it's worthwhile for authors to think about. We may not solve it because people have been complaining about it for a long time, but maybe we could.
Yeah, it would take a consensus and for people to actually follow through, and that's going to be the hard part because
And to get
as
there,
it
you
is
have to
getting
have a good
people to
example first, too, right? So you have to have the one person who does it to give the example, and then see if you can't get people to follow the example. Maybe.
Right, but as we all know, getting people to do anything really, it's like herding cats.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to get a bunch of creative authors who are lost in their own head half the time to actually follow some kind of a format that isn't just word vomit on a page that
especially if it's hard to do. So when you start talking about the ones in line, that gets so hard that it's time consuming. Now see, this is where it would be great if some of the tools just did it for you, right? So if a tool like a Scrivenger or Living Writer or Dribble or Dabble or whatever the next great thing is, if one of their features could be you do definition of characters and you have a phonetical listing, now we'll take that and figure out where your first use is, and we'll do that for you before you hit publish. That would be the way to accomplish that.
Yeah, so, that'd be good. Or so do maybe,
I bet you I could talk to the people and get people. Oh, I have a plan now. If I can come up with a good idea, I have a plan.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, I'll talk.
Yeah,
I'm
maybe
just
at the beginning of each chapter, you could have that little. If you're introducing a new person, you could just have the cast of that chapter or something. If it's important or a difficult name, if it's just how the mechanic or I'm sorry,
if it's Zoe,
yeah.
I love that example because it was such the easy name, but it's
or you could be a little more on the nose and just in conversation you've got someone saying Zoe.
Yeah. I thought about doing that.
It's cheesy, but
how do you say that? Yeah. But it's worth thinking about. And I actually will have some conversations with some of the. I know the guy who makes the Living Writer stuff, even though I don't use it anymore. But it is a good feature request for something like that. All right, I do have to go. This is a good conversation. Even though I just got new people coming on and we're still got questions over here, I will have to ask you guys to show up next time. Scott, welcome. Sorry, we're heading out. I will be putting the whole tape of this session onto YouTube, so you can go after I do a post.
2 minutes?
2 minutes? Yes, I got 2 minutes.
Okay. The one thing that I wanted to bring up as a narrator for authors, when you get done with a chapter or a scene or whatever, do me a favor and everybody else a favor, read it out loud to yourself.
I'll give you one better for that. Don't do it right then. Come back 2 hours later, maybe a day later, and do it. Because if you go back right then, you'll still read the same thing out loud.
Or even a week later.
There's actually, what's really nice, and I recommend this to people, is use Word and have it read it to you. Because then it takes out all subjectiveness. Now, it is robotic. But if you have Word read it to you, that helps. I do that. I didn't do it on my first book. I did it on my second book. And I think it helped out a lot. But I will say I didn't do it after every single edit, because you come back later, do an edit. You come back, someone gives you a comment, you do an edit. I haven't done it over every one, but it did help me catch some of the simple grammar check doesn't catch it, wrong word.
Yeah, because you put in unintended tongue twisters where for some reason you've got 9 words that start with a T all in the same sentence, or a mega run-on sentence that you didn't realize was there. And I found this with my own writing. I've got a couple of people in viewing here that they listen to me read some of my stuff, and I struggled. I knew what I had written. I wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled trying to read this because I was like, what in the hell am I trying to say here? Or, just the unintended tongue twister. And you really need to, if you intend on having somebody read your work, you definitely need to do it. But also just from a mechanical standpoint of, does it actually make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because I had that plenty of times where I went back and read something that I wrote and then read it aloud, and I'm like, I wrote this and I don't know what it means.
I do think a lot of authors hope and expect their editors will catch some of that, or almost all of it. But even if you do it yourself, even if you have an editor do it, even if you have beta readers, even if you have ARC readers, you're still going to have some that make it through. So I never want anyone to expect every book's perfect.
Oh, no.
Best books in the world have problems. But you're absolutely right. You should, as an author, take your due diligence and do that. I do that, and I think others should as well. It takes a lot of time. So what I like with the Word, you can actually set a speed, and you could set it to a little bit faster if you're good listening fast. Not everyone is, but if you're good listening fast, you set it to read to you, and it goes through it, and you could pick out a problem quickly because it comes off in a robotic voice. It's even overly awkward, and so it helps. But that's part of the problem for authors is our tools suck. So Scrivenger won't do this. Word will, but Scrivenger has other tools that do better things. Pro Writing Aid won't do it, but they have other tools. So you've got to either have things like Pro Writing Aid and Scrivenger work together in a really awkward way. But if you want to do that in Word and you're using Scrivenger, you've got to you build an output file to output to Word that then runs that when you need it, and then wait for it to compile. Go out there, then open it in Word, compile, do it. If you make changes, you're going to have to do track changes, because then you're going to have to go back to your source in Scrivenger and change it. And so this is where the universe of the writing tool, oh my God, we need better. Like, there are so many things. This exactly. Just putting in the robotic voice into one of the Living Writer or whatever tool, Scrivenger or whatever tool, that would add so much. Having Pro Writing Aid build directly into the tool, not in an awkward process. Because if they did that, they could charge a little more, but they'd give authors what they need, and we'd have better work. And that would be better for everybody. That's one of my things, soapbox I stand on, and I try to, when I talk to people like the guy at Living Writer, I try to preach that, because if there ever gets to be this thing that's even 90% of what an author needs, I'd buy it. Don't do the cover work. They all try to go after that, right? If we can make our writing tool do the cover stuff, or things like that, it'll be the best thing ever. No, leave the cover work out. That is a separate activity. Get all the writing stuff together and give it to us to a tool so we can give out a good product. I should go work for them.
Yeah.
They don't pay enough. But I do have to run.
Alrighty, sir. I know you need to go.
But it was great talking to you. Again, for anyone who happens to be left, follow me, and you'll see a post come out tomorrow or so. Or you can just go to my links that are in my bio to hit the YouTube channel, subscribe. I'll be putting this video out there later tonight or sometime tomorrow. All right.
All right. Well, good talking to you too, and thanks for having me on.
You're quite welcome. I'll invite you back sometime. And I did ask Andrea; she wasn't available. I couldn't find it. I wanted to do like a 3-panel. Just no one was available this time. But as I keep doing these, I'm going to try to expand the number of people so we could have richer conversations across multiples. But we'll see. Might even do a time when I allow viewers to come up and talk with us. But we'll see. All right. Well, have a great evening, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for everybody for joining in, and hopefully it was, if not entertaining, educational. So
one or the other, or both.
One or both, or both. I'll take both. I'll grab with both hands. So
have a good
all right.
evening.
Thanks for coming out, folks.